Good morning and welcome to Ask a Dietitian Live. Today we are talking about why the low FODMAP diet stops working. And so this is a really good question. And I realized because I engage on some message boards that I don't actually talk about this a lot. So I wanted to host an Ask a Dietitian about this, as well as put together a blog post for you. So why does the low FODMAP diet stop working? So let's say you've tried the low FODMAP diet, you've been on it for a while, you're feeling great, but all of a sudden something changes. It's really frustrating, right? The assumption is that IBS is a static condition, and a lot of people assume that, once they learn to manage it, they have it figured out. And then it comes as a really big surprise when they realize that it's actually something that they have to kind of learn to manage their whole life, and that it ebbs and flows. And sometimes things are really great, and sometimes things aren't really great. And that's why I'm a huge advocate for working with a dietitian, because we help you to figure out those ebbs and flows and what to do when you aren't feeling great. So I have 7 reasons as to why the low FODMAP diet may stop working. Before we jump into those, what I want to say is if you're experiencing a change in your gut in a way that, red flags come up. So primarily this would be blood in your stool, unintentional weight loss. So all of a sudden you're losing weight and you don't know why. That is a really good reason to visit your family doctor, because we want to make sure we're not missing anything. Those could be signs and symptoms of a bigger problem. And a lot of times when you have IBS, you're like, oh, I've been to the doctor hundreds of times, things change, but those would be red flag symptoms. So make sure you see your doctor if you have any of those. So why the low FODMAP diet stops working. A lot of times I find my patients assume that nutrition is the be all and end all of IBS management. However, at Ignite, and if you see a dietitian at Ignite, you know that we actually have 4 pillars of IBS management and gut health. Only one of them is nutrition. And I would venture to say that nutrition isn't the most important pillar, which may come as a surprise coming from a dietitian who talks about nutrition all day, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. The other pillars include medication management, and this is pharmacological and non-pharmacological, which can be really helpful if you're having, IBS flare-ups, so to speak. The other pillar is stress management, which is the most important pillar in IBS management. And is one of the reasons why the low FODMAP diet may stop working. If your stress levels change, if your stress goes up, you're more likely to have that inappropriate brain-gut connection going on. So if you have more stress, you're more likely to activate that fight or flight response, less likely for your body to focus on digestion, and may also alter how you perceive your gut symptoms. So the big assumption with the low FODMAP diet is I'm intolerant to FODMAPs, and somebody without IBS, they don't have any, things going on in their body with FODMAPs. But the fact of the matter is everybody ferments these foods. Everybody's digestive tract breaks them down and produces gas because of them. In IBS, it's how we perceive that gas expansion. That's the problem. Our brain perceives it as pain, whereas somebody without IBS might not even notice that it's happening in their body. They probably don't. They don't have visceral hypersensitivity. So when we're more stressed, we're more likely to have more visceral hypersensitivity. We're more likely to sense that fermentation going on in the gut. And fermentation happens even if you're not eating FODMAPs. There is still some fermentation. We've just removed the most fermentable foods. So stress might make you perceive that a bit more. Stress can also alter digestive habits. So you might be going to the bathroom more or less, and that in itself can cause symptoms. So if your stress isn't managed or your stress levels have changed, that can be why you feel like the low FODMAP diet is not working. So working with your dietitian on stress management strategies. At Ignite, we use mindfulness-based stress reduction, gratitude, self-compassion, and then, of course, refer to the experts, psychologists, clinical hypnotherapists to support care when needed. So that's reason number 1. And then, of course, hopping back over to the fourth pillar, that's the gut microbiota. And alterations in gut health is a reason for changes in your ability to get symptom relief from the low FODMAP diet. So, for example, I went to Montreal last summer. I got food poisoning, and my ability to tolerate FODMAPs was like, because something happened in my gut. So that alteration in gut health, that perturbation of your gut microbiota can contribute to symptoms and can contribute to your ability to tolerate FODMAPs. So this can occur because of food poisoning. It can occur because of antibiotic use. Alterations in gut health can happen because of stress or from eating too much of a restrictive diet, which is why we have it as a pillar of IBS management and gut health. So the gut microbiota is very important, and I'm going to share with you my personal story as we get into the third reason why the low FODMAP diet stops working. So the third reason why the low FODMAP diet stops working is because of staying on the elimination phase too long. So when I was first diagnosed with IBS, the low FODMAP diet didn't exist, or the research was just coming out. And then when it did come out, there wasn't a lot of evidence around the reintroduction piece of things. It was just strictly looking at the fermentation and the osmotic pull of these carbohydrates. So I ate chicken and rice or potatoes and spinach and peppers and zucchini a lot. I ate foods that made me feel safe, and I avoided FODMAPs like the plague. And I stayed on the elimination phase for a very long time. And over time, I found that my tolerance kind of went down. Now, this is all theoretical, assumed based on the current research, as well as what I think happened in my body and what I think happens in lots of people's bodies, is when we don't have variety in our diet, we see a decrease in good bacteria in the number and the types. And being on a restrictive diet probably altered my gut microbiota in a way that made it harder for me to tolerate any amounts of FODMAP foods. And so staying on the elimination phase, we now know alters the gut microbiota in a negative way, reduces good bacteria, and actually increases types of bacteria that are associated with fermentation and bloating. So we now know, and the practice guidelines now say that you should not be on the low FODMAP diet, or you should be on the elimination phase only 4 to 12 weeks. So if you've been on the elimination phase, if you're avoiding all the FODMAPs and you're like, oh my God, I've been doing this for 6 months or 12 months, it is time to reintroduce. We have some really great resources. I'll put them down below. Some great videos as well as some free tools. Reintroduction, we don't have a good evidence based on how to do it, but at Ignite we found a really effective way that's quick and relatively painless. Sometimes reintroduction period, I've seen some stuff that suggests reintroduce over 12 weeks or 14 weeks. We kind of go through things a lot more lickety split because staying on the low FODMAP diet is hard and it impacts gut health. So reintroduction is very important. We reintroduce by categories, and I will put it down below in the comments, our free tools around elimination and reintroduction. So that is reason 3. And I think that's why it took me quite a long time for my gut to be able to tolerate FODMAPs. I had to include them regularly. I had to continue to work on my gut health. I had to add variety. I had to have fiber. I had to add living foods. And over time, my tolerance actually improved. Now, I don't have the exact reason for that. My study is N of 1, me. But I do think it is very likely associated to my restrictive diet because of my IBS symptoms. So reason 4 why the low FODMAP diet stops working, hormonal changes, specifically menstrual cycle. We see a big overlap between IBS and endometriosis. I've seen patients struggle with IBS and PCOS. And of course, just normal hormonal changes with your menstrual cycle. Pay attention to how things change before, during, and after your menstrual cycle, because sometimes you're like, oh, the low FODMAP diet isn't working anymore, but maybe it's right before your period or during your period. So tracking that can be helpful, and then working up on a plan with your dietitian to figure out what you should do around your menstrual cycle to manage that is important. Reason number 5, sleep. Sleep is so important, and something I think we neglect when it comes to gut health. Making sure you get enough sleep is really important for, managing your stress hormones. It's important for your gut microbiota. It's important for digestion. It's important for, how you're feeling as you go into the day. The less sleep I get, the more anxious I am. So that in itself affects how I perceive my gut symptoms. So making sure that you dedicate time to sleep, or if you're struggling with sleep, making sure that you talk with your dietitian or psychologist about some management strategies. I like to say, if we can manage sleep habits through behavioral first and then medication as needed, that would be my advice. And there's lots of different behavioral things that can help with sleep hygiene, cognitive behavioral therapy with a psychologist has been shown to help people that have busy minds, ruminating thoughts impacting their sleep. So that is helpful. Another reason why the low FODMAP diet stops working, changes in exercise. So exercise has a good impact on our bowels. It helps to keep us regular. It helps to manage symptoms, especially in IBS-C, IBS constipation. I find exercise is very key. And if our exercise patterns have changed or decreased, that in itself can impact our symptoms or how quickly our gut moves. So making sure you include exercise is evidence-based to manage IBS symptoms. And if you've had a change in exercise, like an injury preventing you exercising, or for me, I go from like golf season to like gym season because I don't do winter sports, changes in activity from that perspective even can impact symptoms. And the very last reason why the low FODMAP diet may stop working is potentially changes in medication. So starting a new medication or, discontinuing a medication. Medications can have side effects on your bowels. For example, birth control. Changes in birth control may impact how quickly or slowly your bowels move. And that's a common one that I see changed up a lot with women. Of course, not men. You may have been on antibiotics, which influence your gut health. I see a lot of times people get put on antibiotics for UTIs, obviously, and that in itself can cause fluctuations in digestive issues. That's typically the primary reason why I see antibiotics prescribed, and other medications as well. So those are my 7 reasons why the low FODMAP diet may stop working. However, it's highly individual. So working with a dietitian can be a really effective way to start to explore why the low FODMAP diet isn't working and what is missing for you. And then working on the management strategies around that can be helpful. So individualized care in IBS, of course, is the gold standard. Not everybody, of course, has access or the privilege to access dietitians. A lot of times extended benefits cover it. But if you do not have extended benefits or the financial means, we do have some great free tools, which I will put below. If you are ready to get your digestive symptoms under control, working with one of my team members is a really great way to do that. We are specialized in functional gut disorders and digestive disorders, and you can book an appointment in person or online at www.ignitenutrition.ca. I host Ask a Dietitian bi-weekly or every other week. And if you have any questions, please comment below or shoot me an email, and I will be happy to try to answer them in an upcoming episode. Have a great Monday. Bye.